Welcome to the fourth installment of my full collection video series, and this is all cold steel folders. I have about 36 to get through, so this video will be a little bit shorter than the ones previous to this. I'm going to go roughly small to large. This is the Cold Steel Recon 1, Micro Recon 1, with Aus 8 blade steel in that old coating that's kind of like spray paint, and a mini triad lock, and this thing lived on my keychain for quite some time. I took it off for the Kershaw Launch 9, and now I just have a light instead of a light and a knife on my keychain, but I will probably put this back on. I love this little thing. Great to just drop in the pocket too. All right, next up, this is the Con. This was a knife that I had that I bought when it first came out because I loved the blue and I loved the interesting and sort of different Tonto shape. And then Lynn Thompson was designing this thing here, which I thought was kind of neat. Had it, and then I sold it to a friend at work, and then bemoaned that sale to Jimmy Slash, and he very kindly and generously sent me one. So now I have one again, and I will never get rid of this one. This is one of two cold steel folders that I have in my collection that were gifts from the great and powerful Jimmy Slash. All right, that's the Con. Here's the folding Kiridashi. I love this one. This is that 4116 Krupp steel. Oh wait, no, I take it back. This is 4034 stainless steel. I believe it's Krupp's. It's got that integral and very comfortable pocket clip, kind of old school, and you'll see what I mean in a little while. I have an old cold steel that had the old molded handle. Very comfortable handle, very light, inexpensive knife. This is a great little EDC and just sort of utility blade. The Kiridashi. All right, next up, from the DeMarco, nice. From the DeMarco custom design, it's the AD-15 with the scorpion lock. This is a very fidgety knife. I haven't picked this one up in quite some time, and man, I need to change that. I've seen that you can get some aftermarket micarta handles for this now, and things like that make me excited. This is a really comfortable knife, and that does not pinch as readily as you think it might. Great blade shape, and Andrew DeMarco classic. Let's see, yeah, AD-15. And the same time this came out, the AD-10, another Andrew DeMarco custom classic came out. And when this first came out, this is a first run. It's got that hollow grind, very nice thin hollow grind. They changed that after this first run to a flat grind. No doubt it's still really sharp, but the edge might be just a bit more robust. I don't need robust. I have a lot of robust knives, and I don't use my knives robustly. So this really nice hollow grind has always worked just fine for me. S35 VN, nice contoured G10 handle. This was definitely a turning point for cold steel when they came out with this and the AD-15. You know, a nice tribute to Andrew DeMarco, who really took this company into the stratosphere with his designs and innovation. All right, that is like this. The backstop, or the stop pin in the back lock, creating the triad lock. Also, the ever deepening pockets there for lock engagement. But going back before they got the triad lock, here's a Voyager. These were still very strong backlocks. They were still bragging about how strong their backlocks were before Andrew DeMarco came along and stole the show with the triad. So these old Voyagers, they're still pretty stout in terms of lockback folders. This one I got in 1999, I believe, while I was working on a movie called Judy Berlin that we were shooting in Long Island, and the director of that won Best Director at Cannes that year, I think, for indie films, and it was cool. It was really fun to work on, but halfway through the movie I was like, man, I better get a new knife you know, because I'm working. And so I got a new knife, and that was this. And this rode in my pocket for quite some time. There's that original integral lock there, built, molded right into the handle. This old Voyager 2 I'd sharpened, excuse me, so many times. And when I first got my KME, which I never use, I did sharpen this with that and made it very sharp, but kind of ugly because I didn't really practice. Cold Steel Voyager, old. Now here's the El Hombre from about the same time. And I got this was one of my first purchases on knifecenter.com. I think I got this one before I got the my Emerson. You can see a little stain right there at the front of the blade, and I know exactly when that happened. I was cutting tofu lin, which is like a marinated tofu, when I was a vegetarian, and I was on a camping trip with vegetarian girlfriend, and cut this, you know, I'm preparing a little sandwich or something, and I was like, I got so hacked that it discolored my my blade. I kind of knew my time as a vegetarian was limited. But what a beautiful knife this is. That's a 4-inch Vaquero blade on the El Hombre. And by the way, that's actually embossed into the, not embossed, that's not the right word. It's engraved into the blade. I really like that. Instead of the black text you see on a lot of Cold Steel blades, on these old ones, it's all integrated, you know, stamped in. And then here you got the old school jimping on Cold Steels that I love so much. It's like file work. This thing was awesome. I carried this all the time for a long time. This actually fell out of my pocket and fell on a subway track, and I waited around for 2 hours for a station agent to come with a little arm to grab that. I was not about to jump on the tracks. There are people who will help you do that, and you don't even have to ask. This is the ti-lite, also from that era. I was smitten with this design, still am. I just wish those quillions were reversed. It makes no sense. Those quillions should absolutely be reversed in terms of their orientation. If you reverse this, you get even more of a blade catch, especially if it's jimped. I'm wondering if that's why, if that was too close to a wave. And then on this side, you'd have something to press your thumb up against in the saber grip, like this. It just makes more sense, but I'm betting that would have been too much like the wave. I should have asked Lynn Thompson that when I had the chance. Well, I will have the chance again, so I got to remember that question. This one I carried a lot also. Great 4-inch blade, and that is AUS 8A, made in Taiwan. Next, a much newer version of the same knife. This one is stiff. Here it is, the Chris. A beautiful ti-lite Chris 4-inch blade, just really well done. That's AUS 10A, and what I mean by really well done is that I know that Chris blades are not easy to make, whether by hand or by machine, and this is just really, really nicely done and profiled and then sharpened. The edge is really excellent on this knife. I've had this sitting in a pile of 2 knives that I need to send out to Tom Engelson to have handles made. He's Vantage Blade Works on Instagram. He does awesome handles, and I want this with a cool handle. I'm not going to say what it is, but I'll show you when I finally do it. That's the ti-lite Chris in AUS 10A. All right, next up, Voyager Vaquero, the new Voyager 4-inch Vaquero. I say new Voyager, this was like 2006 new, I think. It was a long time ago at this point, or 2010, something like that. Anyway, beautiful Vaquero design, blade, that S-curve based on the Yatagan, a Turkish blade that has a nice deep recurve but returns the point right to center line like a dagger, so you can thrust, but you also get that amazing slashing capability. Awesome handles on this knife I had for a long time, and then I sold it to my buddy Ian, my martial arts teacher, and then I ended up buying it back from him. Such a great knife is this. It was 100% dull though when he gave it back, and I put a screaming edge back on this AUS 8A. Well, I'll show you. This is a cool thing about the Cold Steel knives. They all give you that little extra bit on the tang, so that if you have your finger up in the finger well, you can one hand close all of these knives, all of the cold steel knives I'm showing you. Next up is also a Voyager, and this is the clip point. This for a long time was in my bug out bag for many years. Now I have a Rat 1 in there, and both capable blades, but I wanted to have this one out and in the collection. I sharpened it again, and I've used it. I put it in my pocket for kicking around. I do love that clip point blade, and I love the high flat, it's a full flat grind. It's really thin and slicey. These Voyager 4-inch blades. All right, next up is the Broken Skull. This is one designed by Steve Austin, or is it? This is very much like the Ranch Hand, I believe they called it, or the Ranch Boss that came before it, and now it's called something else, but the same profile. Just different widths of handle, different treatment of the profile, but this one is nice and thin. I love the pink, and I have the pink Snaggletooth MF pocket opener on it. This one I got for an overseas trip, and that was just dumb. Don't do that, please. This is just a testament to my stupidity. I never should have done that, because who knows where I could be if I was ever caught with this on me there. So don't do that. It's stupid. But anyway, XHP steel, great coating, and really nice thin G10. I had one of these in olive, gave it to my bro, he loves it. Next up is an AUS 8 Recon 1. I took the coating off of the hollow ground blade and gave it also a bigger sharpening choil there, and beautiful stone wash under that cheesy coating they used to put on. This is an AUS 8A. I had an S35 VN Tonto. I ended up selling that, and I had an AUS 8 Tonto that was stolen out of my car by some dog-faced pony soldier trolling my street. I was the dumb one who left my car open by accident after emptying the car of groceries and such. Anyway, great knife. I love the Recon 1, and I have no reason to up the steel on this one. This one is just fine. AUS 8, they do a great job with their AUS 8, as they like to say. All right, next up is the Immortal. This is a really cool one. I call this a Tonto, but they call this kind of a gladius. It's supposed to be evocative of a gladius, the Roman sword, but then they call it Immortal, and that also makes you think of who the Immortals were. What, the Persian special guard, and then I don't know. So it's just very cool, or maybe it just means the type of characters who carry these are immortal throughout history. But anyway, a very comfortable handle. I really like this one. Excellent, very thinly hollow ground blade there, but a nice and stout flat grind up front where it counts in terms of thrusting. This used to be Dave's. I think he blunted the tip a little bit, probably stabbing it into something, testing it. You have a really nice pommel here, jimped wonderfully for the thumb on a thrust or a stab like that, but also great for attitude adjustment or even just pain compliance, you know. All right, so that's the Immortal. Next up is the Black Talon 2. I mean, just built for business. Cold Steel's answer to the Spyderco Civilian, with that really nasty S-curve serrated with the awesome Cold Steel 5 teeth and then a large scoop, 5 teeth, large scoop. I love that pattern. And on this blade, it's just horrifying. And you get a nice big chunky tip here. When you look at the Civilian, it thins out a lot here. This you could use all day doing opening boxes and using sort of as a utility knife. You'd scare the hell out of everyone else in the store or the warehouse, but this would be great for that because you have this thick reinforced tip as opposed to the Civilian, which does not. Nice thin G10. Again, all of these have the triad lock unless they're real old. And then you have the thumb plate here, which acts as a wave. So you can wave this out. CTX XHP. So hard for me to say, always has been. And scooped out both sides for pocket clip. The Black Talon 2. If you need a self-defense knife, I would recommend it. Here's the Kudu. This is one that I got the original version with the old style lock. And that was had a ring on top and sort of a ratcheting thing. And you could pull it open and it would lock open, and then you yank back on the ring and it frees the blade up. That broke right away on the one that I got. So for me, I prefer this definitely. This is a very stout sort of slip. It's not a slip joint, but you can see that's a non-locking spring that keeps this thing open pretty stoutly. A pretty elegant solution because this kind of knife you're not going to be using so hard anyway. I'll take sausage and pepperoni, please.
Sausage and pepperoni.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dad.
You got it, baby doll. And then you got contoured injected nylon here, and then a nice kudu, an animal from South Africa. You can see the horns and the snout. It's based on a traditional South African folding knife, and this is a way better design than the one with the pull ring, in my estimation. This was a free gift from Smoky Mountain Knife Works for something, don't remember what. Next up, I had this on me when my older daughter was born. This is the Spartan, and it's a big, nasty recurve, Aus-8, hollow ground, super thin, super sharp, just absolutely devastating. And then on this side, you've got a handle. Your hand is totally captured. I have a medium-sized hand. I have plenty of room. I think you could see someone with much larger hands could fit in there and it would be comfortable and you'd be really locked in. You got this for attitude adjustment, and then all of this really nice milling, or not milling, but pattern scooping in the handle here, molding that makes it feel really good and lock in even more. Your fingers kind of fall in those. This had a blasted finish that I sanded down because it was rusting, and I had just moved to Virginia and I was carrying this and just sweating, and this thing would rust, so I ended up sanding it down. That is the Spartan. Such a badass blade and totally iconic for cold steel. Another one that's pretty iconic for cold steel is the Formac Scout. Also a real iconic design for, I'm going to stop using that word. Also a real big design for Andrew DeMarco. That's not the word. Not big. A real, well, it's an important design for Andrew DeMarco. That's a 4-inch blade. It somehow feels even bigger. You've got a really stout and wide blade. Nice fuller, or not fuller, but swedge up there. This is such a great knife, the Formac Scout. This was also a gift from Jimmy Slash. He was like, "You don't have a Formax?" And he's like, "I have 27 of them," and he sent me one of these. This is the Scout version. So this is injected nylon. This is the Grivery. I love it. I don't need it with the G10. I don't need the Italian version. I don't need the $400 version. But if I did, with the titanium liners and all the other trappings, if I did, I would trust in how amazing it is, because this is an amazing knife. I've used this a lot, kind of outside. It's a grab and go to banger for outdoors, because it's not as big as some of the other ones, but it's pretty much as capable with that weight. Just an awesome knife and quite inexpensive. I have to get the SR1. I guess that's a spoiler alert. You won't see one here, but I want an SR1 in this sort of dress, the Aus-10 and the Grivery. All right, next up, going way back. This I got in New York City at Roseland Martial Arts, a awesome martial arts store that used to exist in Times Square, and they had a huge long counter full of knives, and they had an epic cold steel selection. And I've gotten some of the cold steels in my collection were bought there. This one was, and this one, I was in fear of the sharpness of this for a long time. Nice hollow grind on this medium-sized Voyager, and the medium at the, so they had what, 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, and then they had like a 6-inch. So I think they had four sizes. This has the this is a 5. This has the integral Grivery pocket clip. I put skateboard tape on there in my Nuttin' Fancy days, and it's good because there's nothing stopping you from sliding up there. But I was immediately drawn to the handle shape of this. When I first got this, I didn't like clip points, which is ridiculous. I can't imagine that. But when I got this, I saw this horn-shaped handle. It made me think of navajas. And then the vaqueros came out, and I started like seeing more and more sort of reference. Even though the vaquero is primarily a yatagan, it still has, in the handle, it has some of that navaja, as did this. But over time, I've grown to love the clip points, and this clip point blade is amazing. This is made in Japan, and I don't know what the steel was, probably VG1 on this. Old Voyager with a very stout but non-triad lock. Also in that vein, outdoors knife for a long time for me is this, the Vaquero Grande. 6-inch Vaquero blade, serrated. This thing has been used and used and used and sharpened and used and used and used. But way back in the day when I had this, first bought it in New York City, excuse me, I carried this on me all the time, sort of appendix carry. And you know, I was training in Kali, and I was young and fit, and I carried this, and I thought, man, I'm unstoppable. And now, oh, I shudder at the thought that I was walking around New York City carrying this, only because, you know, they don't like you carrying knives, not even back then. This has that nice traditional jimping, again, that sort of file work jimping. Just an amazing blade. I love this blade, and you can see how it changed over time, and I'll show you how with this modern Voyager. You can see how the shape changed a little bit. Changed quite a bit. Well, first of all, it got a little shorter. This is the XL at 5.5, and this is 6. And so this is the new Voyager series, newest, with this design pattern. But like I said, it's been out for a long time, over 10 years. But I love it. I love those raised handles, raised cruciform shapes, and you've got this amazing Vaquero blade. This one is AUS 8. Again, like all cold steels, you can close them one-handed. All right, continuing on the Voyager tip and continuing on the Vaquero line here is the Lynn Thompson Signature Edition. This is XHP steel and made in Taiwan. Beautiful knife. I have a Snaggletooth MF on there. Wouldn't mind getting the aluminum version for this, just to make it shiny, kind of like the blade. This is one that I carry all the time, dog walking or walking in the park or going anywhere where I feel like I would want it in my pocket in a worst case scenario. And this is the one, complete with Lynn Thompson's signature. Love it. I love how neat it is, and it's so unmenacing, and I like how it's compared to this knife. It's like the opposite. This thing is terrifying, and that signature is as reassuring as your second grade teacher. Okay, next up, hopefully you had a good second grade teacher. Next up is the Drop Point. This is the newest in the lineup of XL Voyagers. I have them all, of the XL anyway. I love that they put jimping on. I wish they would do that with the new ones, and maybe they will once they sell all the old ones. But it feels great on the thumb, and especially when you come up here, you know. And for this knife, you could see this one being used at a campsite or something, and that jimping really does feel good on there and gives you real positive grip. This one reminds me of a barong, the leaf-shaped short sword from the Philippines, and I'm sure that went into some of the calculus of the design, seeing as they're all into that stuff, especially Lynn Thompson, and he was there when this one was designed. The Voyager, this is a saber grind, nice and sharp and very stout. Aus 10A. Next up, this is the Tonto. I had the Tonto in Aus 8, gave it away, and then I wanted it back, so I got it. This is 10A, Aus 10A, and this is a prototype for a Snaggletooth MF that Rob Penna of Snaggletooth Tactical was working on. I think he put that on the back burner because his other designs are a little bit more easier to make and more popular, I think. But very nice. I like having it on there. Of course, I love the serrations. I chose the serrations on this straight blade just to a straight blade is devastating as it is, but you add the serrations and somehow it just seems extra. Well, I guess serrations are always a little bit extra. That's the Tonto serrated, and then last of that series is the Chris, the Voyager Chris. Another impressive crisp blade. This one, I like how they both end in the downward tip. That's how it's supposed to work, so that you get that nice tip slash, like having a little hawkbill or gununting at the end of your sword. But if you or blade, but if you hit here and then pull cut across, man, that's like a couple of vaqueros in a row, ending with a black talon right up front. So just a wicked design. People might look at this and think it's goofy or think it's just a sort of ethnic reference to the Malaysian and Filipino blades, but it is a really useful design, not just for self-defense and gruesome tasks either. All right, that's the Chris Voyager XL. Moving along to the Recon XLs, Recon 1 XL in XHP steel. This one is is definitely a prized folder in this collection. People are always asking about these. They're the XL Recons because they don't make them anymore, and people really want them to make these again. Really want that, and I see why, because they're amazing. They have a little less in terms of handle commitment here. When you look at the Voyager handle, you have all those choils and stuff. They're both very, very comfortable handles. Some people tend to like less in that term, and it feels great back here. You get all the benefit of that long handle and a great, beautiful clip point blade that's really broad, and that's a full height flat grind and not that thick. So this thing is slicey as the day is long, and it's got the sort of matte finished coating, unlike my other Recon 1 XL, which is the Tonto. It has that shiny blade finish. This is also XHP steel, also made in Taiwan, so it leads me to believe that it's from like one of 2 or 3 model years, because they ended up moving to S35VN. So yeah, here it is, the Tonto. Just a beautiful Americanized Tonto that Cold Steel is known for, Lynn Thompson is known for. That straight, hollow ground, thin, slicing, cutting blade, and then that wedge-like flat ground tip, reinforced tip for going through tough stuff and making sure that it goes all the way in. Man, this is awesome. Weird thing here, it'd be nice to have a big sharpening choil, or have the same sharpening choil that was done here, but anyway, first world problems. Beautiful Recon 1 XLs. All right, next up, this is based on a Japanese knife. I know, to me, I always think of it as a gununting, and I say so. Gununting is the hawk-billed sword that the Filipinos use a lot, especially in Pakiti Tertia Kali in the southern Philippines and such. Their Special Marines use that knife, and it looks a lot like this. But this is based on a Japanese blade designed by Andrew Demko, who is a Japanese martial arts practitioner. The Demkos, Andrew and John, their dad had an Aikido studio growing up. I don't know if they still do, but they still practice the arts. And man, I wouldn't mess with either of them. They got that big farm boy strength, but also the skill of a pretty advanced Aikido, Aikijitsu practitioners. This is based on a helmet breaching tool, I believe. Is that right? Helmet breaching tool and armor breaching tool. I'm pretty sure. It's just pretty nasty. And again, you have the capability of making this a much larger knife by just sliding your hand down the handle. And look at that, you got some serious reach. That's a 5.5-inch blade. That's a 6.5-inch handle, or a 7-inch handle. I think this is a 7-inch handle. So you're all the way back there. You got some pretty nice reach there. And yes, the fuller does work. Ow, whoa. Maybe not that time, but yes, you can, if you're not under the camera, use that fuller to sort of flick it open. All right. I'm not gonna try and prove it to you, but I have in the past, just not under this camera. Okay, next up, roughly in terms of size, oh yeah, one of my absolute favorites, the Espada, this beautiful clip point blade in this gorgeous handle, horn-shaped handle, of course, based on and inspired by the Spanish navaja, the large folding fighting knife that Spaniards would carry in their sash or cummerbund after the carry of swords was made illegal. You can't take the temper away, you know, from a Spaniard whose honor has been besmirched. He's still going to want to fight even if you take the sword off his belt. So they designed these big, beautiful locking folders, and they had locks here that were sort of ratcheted, and they had a ring to undo it, sort of like the kudu I was talking about before, but stouter. And then handles made of horn and shaped like horn to accommodate the large clip point blade, large bellied fighting blades. Love the Spanish navaja, and grateful, so grateful for Lynn Thompson and Cold Steel for making a for making an incredibly stout and well-built and beautifully designed modern folding navaja that you would bring into combat with you if it were appropriate. In other words, strong as hell. I love it. I love this knife. Let me contrast it with what I had much longer, but much earlier than this. That's S35VN. That's a flat ground blade. This is the much earlier version. This is the G10 version, which came out maybe 2 years after this. But look at the blade difference. Very, very different blade. I think this bottom one is trying to evoke the long Spanish clip a little bit more than this top one, which looks more like an American Bowie. But in either case, they're beautiful. This one is hollow ground and blasted. Very, very sharp, made in Taiwan, AUS 8, very smooth. And then all of these have, unless otherwise stipulated, have the triad lock. And then of course you've got the thumb disc, thumb plate / wave opener, TM. All right, next up, oh gosh, got knives falling all over. All right, this is one that lives in the kitchen, not for food prep, but in the thing where we keep our letters and mail, so that in case you need to open mail, you can use this, or boxes. Love seeing the girls open boxes with this. My wife primarily, but this is the Luzon. This is based on a Filipino knife here, and you've got again that integral grivery clip, which is removable, though, you know, I don't see why you would, but you can. Sort of a bamboo evocative, a handle made of grivery evocative of bamboo. And you have a liner lock here, which is somewhat unusual for a Cold Steel, and a flipper that works like a dream, but it's not on bearings. And you've got a secondary lock, which actually on this lock, on this knife, not being a triad, but having that large a blade, I do like the secondary lock. So I welcome it. And if I'm ever fussing around, or I'll bring this out to smoke a cigar or whatever, I usually use this, engage that lock, secondary lock. Beautiful long clip point blade. The Luzon, it also comes in a small 4-inch version. Next up, this was a housewarming gift from my brother when I moved into this house here. And this is the Raja 2, the cold steel, infamous and famous cold steel folding kukri. Look at that beautiful, beautiful blade. Love this thing. And it's also prized because of its sentimental value. I love this horse hoof pommel here. Really, the way it extends down here, it really gives you a lot of leverage for this kind of chopping motion. And then it has that nice curve down here, and that bird's beak that captures your pinky. And this is just a great knife for that kind of action. This would be an awesome knife if you do a lot of work outdoors, but you don't want to always be carrying a machete, because it's got that nice triad lock, that giant stop pin between the lock bar lock bar and the blade here. Just an awesome knife. This one is in AUS 8A and blasted. Don't really carry this one much. I don't really carry many of these much, actually. Okay, and then next up is the large version of the Chris ti-lite. This is a signature edition, Lynn Thompson. Again, you see a signature. This one is in, instead of the AUS 10 that the small one is, this is 440C, right? Yeah, 440C. Made in Taiwan. Really nice blade. Super sharp. Just nasty, nasty, nasty. And by the way, on a thrust, this is just continuing to saw in as that blade widens out. Here you have a liner lock, super stout. You got like 100% engagement. Ain't going nowhere, and it's not the easiest to disengage, which to me is confidence inducing. Look, I even broke a little bit of my nail. You can wave it open with the Quillian, but again, I wish they were reversed, but that's probably a copyright thing. Okay, that's Grivery, by the way. All right, next up. This is one I bought on a lark. I used to have the 4-inch version of this with no serrations. Wish I still had that. This is the 6-inch holdout, nasty, nasty knife. Holdout 1, I believe. Or, yeah, holdout 1, I think. That is just a wicked blade based on the Skian Scottish blade that goes in the sock, or just a basic Scottish dirk. You have that 3 things of jimping there. This would have been a nice one to have that traditional style file work jimping on. Long G10 handle with the speed holes, which on the smaller version were really good for reorienting the blade. If you had it in reverse grip and then you wanted to flip it, you kind of put your fingers in these speed holes and just flip it around. This is too big for me to do that with comfortably. I haven't really practiced. Wicked AUS 8 blade. I remember this was $40 when I bought it. I don't know what they cost now, but this thing is awesome. Okay, 2 more here, 2 more, and they are related. Next up is the Espada XL in G10 with the blasted AUS 8A blade, hollow ground, so incredibly sharp, because I've fussed over this one a lot. This is the daddy of them all, the big daddy of them all, the big Navaja, the big one, and I dig it, man. I dig it so much, especially when you hold it down here. It does become an Espada. It does become like a short sword. That's a 7.5-inch blade, and then that's a 9-inch handle, roughly. And then here is the version, also AUS 8, that my bro got me at a gun show. Love this thing. Hollow ground, again, AUS 8, super thin hollow grind, almost feels, I mean, I guess they're the same. These are the same era. These are of the AUS 8 era. Now they're flat ground and still awesome. You got that shiny G10 polished nicely. It looks beautiful. And reminds me of the Almar knives of the 80s, that kind of thing. Right up next to the aluminum bolster. So beautiful. And then again, that ergonomics. You can be way up here if you're camping with your Espada, or you can be back here, or you can be here, or you can be here with that sub hilt as a trigger, and giving you that distance. And then you can come even further back. Just a stellar, exquisite knife. I don't carry these. I'm sure it's no surprise. I do like to hold them both and swing them around. One last thing I got to show you about the Voyager grips. This, as you come down and you're here, this is meant to go into the palm of the hand at the very extreme. And you can really use that and you get a nice grip. I meant to show that off before. So that's it from smallest to largest. Here's the largest, obviously, and there's the smallest. My cold steel folding collection. It's been a hell of a journey, and I look forward to it continuing. I have several more I want, and I'll be going for it. All right, thanks for watching.